If you're looking to buff out paint on anything, a car, a motorcycle, something you just painted, something you painted years ago, there'll be good, useful information on this video, and you can watch it in full 4K. Just set your YouTube device accordingly for the high def playout. Now on this video, we're going to do the last step of our carbon fiber seat cowl, which is going to be buffing out the paint. We had a few really cold days. I have the part down 3 days now. Under a heat vent, that paint should buff out like a mirror very quickly, very easily. Now, this video of sharing information of how to buff out paint would apply to the same if you were buffing out a car, a guitar, a boat, no matter what. Buffing out paint is can be tricky. We're going to try to share some good information on this video. Now I know, just like the parts of the FZR that I replaced when I did the restoration, I know, and I'm going to try to show this up close. This part, it took a while, but the imprint of the material, the weave came through. It took a while. Now when we're done buffing this part, you're not going to see the weave at all, but as time goes by, it's going to come back. And as I make the part for the MT-09, I have a way to try to have that be a permanent thing. We're going to try that, and that's coming up very soon. We're going to make the same similar that we made for this bike, a seat cowl for the back, but with a much more sophisticated way of doing it that should eliminate that imprint. We'll see if it works out as planned. Now all the paint on all my bikes, everything in this garage is buffed out. There's no secret to how to do it. I put it on many videos. I'm going to try to summarize it for this one part, but you could do that same process for anything, for a whole motorcycle. This is even a bike that has factory paint has been buffed out, and bikes that I've repainted the whole bike right down to the bones, and bikes with 42-year-old paint that I've managed to make, I think, a little bit nicer than factory paint. And the list goes on and on, but it's all, no matter what you do, it's the same information to get the paint flat with 2000 grit paper and then buff it out with any number of good products that they make right now, and we're going to show how we do that. Now, to buff out any paint efficiently and easily, I've tried a lot of things. I've tried every grit of sandpaper, even finer than 2000. I've done 2500, 3000, but the most efficient way, the quickest way to get the paint flat, at least under my shop conditions, is 2000 grit. And I have tried every product that I could get my hands on or get a sample of, and it's 4CR 8065. That's my personal choice, not because it's the best, it's because this is the easiest to use, and I have a limited amount of time. I like to get things done as efficiently as possible. I've had rougher compounds and smoother compounds. This one seems to be the perfect balance of get it done very quickly and using up the little Harbor Freight buffer. It seems to be a good combination to get a nice gloss very quickly. Now, a lot of people have trouble getting 8065 because there are a limited amount of suppliers that handle that. This is a much more common product that you can buy, and I found it to be every bit as good, every bit the same, except I have a dealer locally that handles 4CR products, and Dale graciously gave me this to test, and it works just as good as 8065, and it is available. I think you can even get this from Amazon, Evercoat. Again, good. You got to start with good quality products. The little hand buffer that I found the easiest to use with motorcycle parts. I don't think you'd want to do your car or a trailer truck with this. You'd want the bigger unit, but this is a little palm buffer. It's under 20 bucks from Harbor Freight, and every time you use it, a good suggestion is replace the pad. Don't use an old pad. Again, that's a little tip that'll make it a lot easier for you. And the pads that I use are terry cloth, not the microfiber ones. Terry cloth, they're very inexpensive. They come, I think, 2 or 3 to a pack. I don't have an unopened pack, but every time I use compound, I like to use a brand new pad. It just saves a lot of work, and the job comes out so much nicer. So the biggest tip of all is don't spend the extra effort to buff out a part the day you paint it, or In my case, I like to let it sit up by that heating vent because it's really cold outside now. Even an extra day, 2 days, a week. The longer you wait, the easier that paint is going to buff out. Now, because we paint outside, there's always a little bit of dust or what's left over of little fish eyes or some imperfection, or in this case, the imprint. The imprint in the part is one of the things we want to get rid of. So what we're going to try to do is with a soft sanding block, sand this whole part perfectly flat with 2000 grit and soapy water with a little Dawn. Now, another tip that'll save you countless amount of work is use brand new clean microfibers. Kirkland brand that you can get. The big box stores sell it. You can also get it off Amazon. Dale supplied me a box of these years ago. I did some work for him, and I've still got some of them. So these are really a nice quality, and when you're buffing paint, the idea is not to scratch it, don't have any grit, or don't for any reason use an old microfiber, or you just make a lot of extra work for yourself. This is not supposed to be that much work. Another tip is don't use a dirty bowl that's got little contaminants in it, and the contaminants get onto the sandpaper and you put unnecessary scratches in. I like to just change the water often. A couple of drops of Dawn is all you need. Any kind of dishwashing detergent. That'll make this, the whole objective is to make it easy and without making yourself crazy that it doesn't come out the way you want. Okay, so this is the soft block you can buy at any body shop supply or from Amazon. This one I've had for probably 20 years. Piece of the sandpaper, and again it's Rhino Wet 2000. You cut the sheet right in half and it fits perfectly on a sanding block. And you shouldn't need more than 1 or 2 sheets to do this job. But here is the whole thing in a nutshell. I want to be very careful I don't go through on the edges. I want to make sure any little spots, any little imperfections, that I get them flat. And then when the whole part is flat, it'll be ready to buff. But I do this on all the tutorial videos so that you can see how long this should take. And this, I want to leave the camera running. This might get a little boring. So I want to show we go from that finish, which is relatively glossy with a lot of little imperfections. And let's see how long it takes when you use the best material possible and you do it methodically. It really should go relatively quickly. Now, a lot of people like to do waffling. It's sanding in one direction and then 90 degrees. I haven't found myself under these. Maybe that's good on the hood of a car. I'm doing a small part like this. It saves some, but it's not going to save you half an hour. The whole idea of this is if you've seen how this is done and you can do this. I actually did this to my minivan. I did some little work that I did, and I had to touch up the part with a spray gun, and I can't even find it now. So it really is. This is a useful skill, and it's a compromise now. Now keep in mind, any kind of body work, any kind of, especially paint, there's more than one way to do it, and people that are professionals all have their own little tips and tricks and things they share, and maybe things they don't want to share because they're making a living. I'm not in a position where I'm making a living. I don't have to keep any secrets from anybody. In fact, I wish that everybody knew how to do this, and we go to a motorcycle meetup and everybody'd have a shiny bike. Well, okay, just so you see it in real time without any camera cuts or anything like that, I want to just dry this off. And this will hopefully keep the video from getting too long. Okay, give it a quick second or two to just dry up. And now, without the camera moving, this is what I'm looking for. Just a little bit of reflection. You can see up here I've got all the little sanding dust and little what's left over of the moon craters. But this is now flat. And once I get the whole part buffed and it looks like this, and it's just going to be a matter of time, we'll come back to the part and it'll be ready to buff. Now once you're done with the sanding block, and believe me, the sanding block can only do so much, because at the end there'll always be, if you've painted outdoors or painted under some condition that you're not perfect, you don't have a very expensive spray booth or anything, we always have what's left over of the imperfections in the part. They'll always show up after block sanding as little spots. Now the trick is to use the tip of your finger and a piece of sandpaper, 2000 grit, until they disappear. And that's easier said than done, because the one thing you don't want to do, you can use up the used sandpaper that you used from the block, but it's best to get a brand new piece of sandpaper and just work that in an X pattern until that area is as flat as that. Because until the whole part is as flat as that, we can't go on to the next step. And this is one of the steps that people that complain the videos get too long. Well, you leave out this step and you're never going to have the parts, you're not going to be satisfied with them, I think, in the end. Now this is really the essence of a real high quality paint job. And it's when you get to this point, to spend a little bit of extra time or energy, it's not even a hard decision to make. Let's just take one of these, and I want to show this in real time. Back and forth, maybe give it an X pattern, because I don't want to remove, if I was to use a block, I'm pressing down with, let's say, 10 pounds of pressure on a big wide area. When I'm doing this, I'm using 10 pounds of pressure on like the edge of a part. So it would tend to get done a little bit faster. And sometimes after you do it, you got to go back and find the part. Yeah, here it is right here. But it's a brand new piece of sandpaper helps. And when you think about when this part is done, I have this part buffed, polished, and waxed. And I will have this, just like all the motorcycles that are in that garage, for the rest of my life, because I don't buy and sell motorcycles. So if you're doing anything that you're going to have with you for a long time, this time that you spend the extra time on a day when it's below freezing, who cares? Okay, so once I get rid of that, and I want it to show in real time again, this just takes, I hate to make the videos long, but without a camera cut, and we're going to work, there's a couple other little ones there, one by one, with extreme patience. I want to get that perfect before I go on to the next step. Now this is another technique, and I wanted to show this when you're getting rid of little imperfections. I'll start with my fingers out on the end of the sandpaper. This is a really good tip. Move them down, move them down, move them down, move them down. Because remember, at my fingertips, I'm putting a lot of pressure on a very small area. So the sandpaper is going to lose its razor edge very quickly. So in this case, the little spot I'm working on is right here. And I'm just doing this as a demo. And once I go, say a minute or two, I'll move the paper up, keep doing it, change my motion, do circles, do X's, do O's, whatever, and then move the sandpaper up. And by doing that, I get the benefit of the high pressure of my fingertips really working that sandpaper, because remember, this is only 2000 grit. And a lot of people are tempted to go to 1500 or whatever. And yeah, the part will sand out 10 minutes faster, and it'll take you 2 hours longer to buff it. The 2000 grit and those products I show, and I have worked on that formula for many years, and it's the best that I've been able to come up with. And if somebody else comes up with something even better, I'm going to watch that video very attentively. Now, it's always tempting to use up the pad that you've used the previous time you use this, but believe me, I don't want this to be a compromise. Sometimes when you have rubber gloves on, this can be a little bit of an issue getting out of here. These, I've heard people wash them and use them on their car or something. I'd just rather throw them away. They're not that expensive, and when you think of what you're going to have, when you have a beautifully buffed out part for the rest of your life, that just, to me, every time I walk in a garage, I'm glad I didn't compromise this. So with the part fully flat sanded now, there are a couple of tips about this material too. If you buy this, never leave it where it's going to freeze. I have bought, in the past, I bought this and left it in the garage because I was working on something. I don't know that it gets ruined, but it doesn't do it any good either. So, and a lot of times it'll look like peanut butter or something when you're done. Now, everybody says, and I've watched a lot of videos, that there's all kinds of tricks for doing this, putting dots on the pad and everything. Well, maybe there is, but the best thing is and I don't know any other way of doing it. You want to get a lot of it around the edge. This is a part of the buffer that's going to do the work. In here, not much is going on. And no matter how you do it, I want to get that around the edge. Now, as I always do, and I always say, this is one of the things I'm trying to do, is show how long this should take. It shouldn't take hour after hour after hour unless you've skipped one of the steps or substituted some of the material. Just bear with me and let's see how long this takes. You don't want to hold the buffer in one position. You want to constantly be moving it. This is an orbital. Again, these are about 20 bucks in Harbor Freight. And once you see the shine start to come up, it's only going to get better. And you can tell, as long as you're willing to spend an extra half an hour, 45 minutes, you can make it look like a show quality paint job. And you can do this to the hood of your car. Now, it's a little early to be looking to see if this is what we want. Now, because you really can't see even with the macro lens, I'm going to show it anyway, how quick that paint comes up. I'm not sure you can see it. It comes up very, very quickly. When you've not skipped a step and you've used the material and the paint is cured, this should go relatively quickly. If it doesn't, think of what steps you did differently than what I just showed on this video, and maybe you can make it that you can save a little time. Now, this is a step that I don't like to compromise. I like to take my time. I'm not in a rush. I try to put on some music, put on a Steely Dan album or something, and just little by little move around. Don't use the same position over and over. Go back and forth. Dry the part off with a clean microfiber. Look for places where you can still see the sanding scratches. Move around, and if you just stay in one position for too long, it not only gets boring, but you get your arm cramped too. This takes time. It's a labor of love. But boy, in the end of this, when this part is all sparkly and shiny, and you know, it's going to be that way forever. Now, the final step before I put the part back on the motorcycle, I want to give it a thorough waxing because I don't want to have a problem that I'm going to scratch it or do some unnecessary damage putting it back together or riding a bike. So. And this is the best wax. Thank you, Joe Padula. I have used this on both of my cars and all of the motorcycles, and it's available from Amazon. Great stuff. Once you use this, you'll be impressed. Again, a nice clean microfiber that's not contaminated, and we're ready to put this back on the motorcycle. Get a look at how it's going to look. It's got a protection of that insulator wax is just great stuff. Again, thank you, Joe Padula. And that is the technique I've used for many, many years, and I think it's the easiest way to buff anything out that I know. And if you know a better way, send me the link to the video. From this point on, it should be very, very easy to get this back on the motorcycle. There's 2 bolts, hold those tabs on. And I was very, very careful after all the work, and it goes over the last 5 videos to put that finish on, and I didn't want to scratch it or have an issue with it. And taking it out to the garage, now keep in mind the garage is really cold this time of year. We've been below freezing a lot of the days, and I wanted to be real careful because a lot of times when I'm working out in super cold conditions, I'm just looking to get back in the house as soon as possible. Didn't want to damage us. Now, I did this restoration on this bike. All of the paint, all of the black, it's Bentley black. The gold, I mixed from pigment. I mixed the paint myself. The gold wheels, the whole restoration is out on the channel. You can look up the whole thing or any part of it. And this is one of the bikes that I think, to me, is the 500 hours I spent, well worth it. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and there's some useful information that you can pass on, use, sell to the Eskimos, I don't know. But I think that part came out great. It's all made from scraps. But what's really important, we're going to be making the one for the MT-09, and I'll do it step by step from the first part of laying out the part, the carbon fiber work and everything. So if you're interested in that kind of work, it'll be coming up soon. In the meantime, again, hope you did enjoy the video. And always keep in mind, I can only show the way that worked well for me over many, many years. I try to share that information. It's all free. And thanks, guys, so much for watching.